Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to Tuning Into Vision. I'm Janet Young, and I'm really happy to be with everybody and see all your smiling faces. For the next 45 minutes, we're going to explore vision, and we'll see how there's much more to eyesight than meets the eye. I'll take you on a guided tour through the brain, highlighting some aspects of our visual system along the way. And hopefully this will give you a taste of how tuning into your vision can actually help you feel better. You know, we tend to not really think about our eyes much unless they're causing a problem for us. So let's just take a minute right now, like 30 seconds maybe, to just welcome our eyes into the space. You can close your eyes if you like, and just welcome them, say hi, notice them, appreciate them. No judging, just check in with them and say hi. Wonderful. So I'd like to share with everybody a quote from David Williams, who's a medical optics professor and the director of the Rochester University Center for Visual Science. And he said, sight, depth perception, eye-hand coordination, all abilities we take for granted, are some of the most biologically complex tasks we humans undertake. And more than 50% of the cortex is devoted to processing visual information. So understanding how vision works may be key to understanding how the whole brain works. Understanding how vision works may be key to understanding how the whole brain works. Fascinating, isn't it? Our way of being is inextricably intertwined with our way of seeing. So does anybody here have eye issues? I see a lot of hands raising. Great. Christy, would you just like to unmute and just share briefly what your issue is and what you're doing about it?
You're so cute. Janet, I'm so excited to be here. I have cataracts and I have astigmatism and a couple of other things going on right now, and they're checking for glaucoma. I don't think I have that, but they're checking for it. But it's interesting because I'm working with a functional neurologist. Funny that you should say this, that the eyes work on, give us a window into the brain, because that's what he's doing. He's testing to see what's going on with my eyes and the vision, to see exactly, to get a map of my brain, which is fascinating.
So cool. Thanks for sharing that. Excellent. So I knew a little bit about Christy's story, so I wanted her to share that, because typically most of the interventions consist of prescriptions for glasses, laser surgeries, or other surgeries that actually work on your eyeball itself. And their intended goal is often clear vision. But clear vision isn't even the primary function of our visual system. The primary function of our visual system is coordination of many, really almost most things that we do. So it really coordinates how we move, how we feel in the world, and let me go back to screen sharing here. Welcome, Laura. The share is, the little thing is spinning around. Let's see something here. Oh, hang on. There we go. So I love this picture of our brain. This is not just the visual system exclusively, but it's just such a cool picture. It shows how complex the brain actually is and how many different connections there are. So our visual system is a vast complex of neural networks, constantly, ceaselessly iterating feedback loops, creating what we think and what we think we see. And in turn, these different parts of the brain also then influence how our eye actually processes the light vibrations coming in the first place. And a lot of this process is really mysterious and not well understood, but it's fascinating to me that they can't really do a retinal transplant. They can transplant the cornea of your eye, which is the outermost layer in front of your iris and pupil, but the attempts they've made to do transplants of retinal material inside your eye, they can't really, they've done a few, but they don't actually tend to improve sight very much. And that's because the connections are so complicated, and as the they can't replicate the optic nerve as it takes the information out of the eyes and back into the other parts of the brain. But there's a lot of really interesting research going on right now. So it's beyond the scope of this presentation, but it's pretty exciting, and hopefully I'll be talking about that sometime in the future. So let me ask a question. Who knows where their visual cortex is in their brain? Anybody? You could just unmute, shout it out, give a visual. Come on, someone. No? Okay. So your visual cortex is about the size of the palm of your hand, and it's located in the back of your skull, like right in your occipital lobe, and it roughly runs from below your hair spiral to your occiput. And so from the time light hits the retina in your eye till an image is processed in the brain is about 13 milliseconds, which is like super fast. So in a minute, we'll look a little bit more closely at visual pathways, but just think about it. Like from the front to the back, with a million zillion interactions along the way, this is what your brain is doing all the time, like ceaselessly, every second, every millisecond, processing information. And different parts of your brain are using that information to put together images, to put together where we are in space, to help put together our thoughts, everything. And it's very interesting because they're estimating now that about 80% of visual perception is actually memory. So we'll see in a minute, but everything goes right through the center of the brain, and it goes right through the areas of memory and emotion. And they say 80% of the image that we see is filtered through that process, and only 20% is really from direct input from the eyes. So sensory information is not just sent to the brain, it actually comes from it, which I find that just endlessly fascinating. And vision impacts so many aspects of our being that we don't even think about. Our autonomic nervous system function, hormonal activity, movement, posture, the ability to think clearly, and our ability to navigate the world and relate to other people. It has so much to do with our embodiment and our connection to ourselves and to the world around us. And vision leads, and the eye, body, and environment follow. So I always love this picture because it really kind of shows the impact of digital technology on our little beings. You see, like, there's like 10 people there, everybody's schlumped over, they're like totally drawn into this thing the size of the palm of their hands, and nobody's looking at each other. There's one guy out of all of them who's actually looking at the people around him and maybe is interacting with one of them. So it's something, again, that I never really thought that much about before, but how we use our eyes totally affects how we connect in our world. And I basically had pretty good eyesight until I was about 40 when I needed reading glasses. But I did spend 30 years, more or less, at the computer in a job where there was a lot of high stress and tension, tedium, and I really spent a lot of time totally over-focused and sucked into my computer screen, and often when I was really, under a lot of pressure. And when I was doing that, the rest of the world was completely tuned out, and I was pretty much unaware of my body until it hurt enough that I had to respond. So I, always had lower back pain, neck tension. I always laugh at this guy because I feel like I probably looked a little bit like him. And then when I relaxed, I probably looked like this guy. So um, I finally started to become aware once I needed the reading glasses to, I was introduced to natural eye vision techniques. And I became aware that, like, if I could catch myself when I was so over focused, I could take a pause and reset, refresh my posture, my mind, give my eyes a break, and it would help a lot to reduce my stress and tension. But there's another aspect of vision that's always really, really, really intrigued me. And I, from the time of a young age, loved looking at paintings. They made me feel alive and inspired these emotions that were unfamiliar to me half the time, and I just loved it and found it fascinating. Paintings would make me feel alive in a way that I wasn't feeling in other times. And I was fascinated even as a kid that an image on a flat surface painted by somebody from a different time and place completely could affect me so profoundly. And one of my favorite painters is Paul Cézanne. And I mean, I remember the first time I saw this tree, I was like, oh, I could feel the wind blowing. I could feel the light. I could feel the heat. Sometimes when I look at some of his paintings, I feel like I can actually smell them. And so it made me want to paint. So by the time I was 10, I was taking painting lessons outside of school. And I got used to really paying attention to what I was seeing and how it was making me feel. And when I looked at the Cézanne painting, I was like, wow, he's made a tree look like a fully expressed person. And he had such a unique vision, but it actually felt way more real to me than other painters who painted more naturalistically. And I love one of the quotes from him. As I tried to understand his paintings, I would read some of the things he wrote. And he said, to paint from nature is not to paint the subject, but to realize sensations. So when I read that, I was like, whoa, what does that mean? I had no idea. And I still kept looking at his paintings and trying to figure out, like, what's going on, and like, how did he feel this, and how is he coming up with these sensations? And it seemed like he was being very, very, very keenly attuned into his vision. So one day, by this time I was probably about 18, I walked outside of my house, and all of a sudden I looked at these trees that I had probably seen every day of my life so far, and I was like, I saw them like one of his paintings. And I was like, oh, that's what he saw. And it was so exciting because I've been struggling with him and loving him and all these different things. And then I was like, oh, and I realized that there was like this reciprocity of vision that, by me looking so much at his work, I had internalized it. And so now when I look out at the world, I see it the way he saw it. And our eyes are not just cameras mechanically feeding us data from the external world, but it's like this much more subtle and complex process that involves our whole being, really. Our emotions, our memories, everything. So it's not just simply a painter overlaying a fantasy on what he sees in the real world. Our sensations are virtual constructs that are produced by many different areas of our brain, not just our eyes. And these connections are so complex that it's hard to really untangle them. And so it's still mysterious with all the research. It's still mysterious, which I also love. And it's hard to really parse out in our vision relationships what's being propelled by our actual senses versus our memories, the emotions those memories elicit, electrical impulses, chemical reactions. Like it's this beautiful mixture of things that creates actually what we're seeing. So today, I'd just like to take a tour together with you, tuning into our eyes and doing a visualization. And before we do that, I just want to go over a couple aspects of vision that will help us on the tour. How does that sound? Does anybody have any questions? Cool. So basically, as I mentioned, clear sight is not really the only function of our brain, but of our visual system. It's a secondary function, and all these other aspects of coordinating our being are really the main function of our eyes. And those functions actually, to work effectively and efficiently, require the stimulation from our senses to work well. So basically, and I just love these pictures of the brain because they're so beautiful. And again, this is not just the visual system itself, but it's just a beautiful rendering of our brain. So here's another rendering, and I'm just going to walk us through a few basic things about our visual system. You can see, I love this one that's from above because you can really see how the visual system is really a huge part of our brain. And so light, the first thing that happens is light comes into the eyes, and then in the retina, so your eye also is about the size of a golf ball, which is kind of amazing. But basically, the retina is the inside of the eyeball, so it's sort of like the, and then it's filled with a fluid called the aqueous humor. But the retina itself is the insides of the outside, if you will, of the inside of the sphere. And there's hundreds of millions of photoreceptors, and that's the retina. And it translates the electrical impulses, it translates the light vibrations into electrical impulses that then leave the back of the eye through the optic nerve and travel to various areas of the brain until it gets to the visual cortex, which is, as we saw, in the back of the brain. And then from there, information goes out to other parts of the brain again. And again, it's this big feedback loop, and a lot of what happens in the visual center actually then coordinates how the light accommodation happens in the eye to begin with. So again, the retina translates the light vibration into electrical impulses, which go through the optic nerve at the back of the eyeball here. And that's cranial nerve 2 for all of you cranial people. And it travels back to the optic chiasm, which is right here. So it goes directly into the center of the brain. And at that point, it actually crosses over. And that is so that some of the information in each eye goes to the other side, and some of it stays on the same size. That's what allows us to see stereoscopic vision, because the two halves of our brain are completely separate. So they cross in front of the hypothalamus and then go on to the thalamus, which acts as a relay station for our senses. Everything feeds into the thalamus, and then the thalamus sort of parses it out to different areas that need it. And the thalamus is part of the limbic brain, so it's traveling right through this area of our brain that is emotions and memories are processed. And these pathways are super complex, and they're really still not very well understood, but that's why, one of the reasons why our memory and emotion are so closely linked to how our sensory information is processed in the rest of the brain. And again, these areas require the stimulation from the senses to perform effectively. So then basically this big area here in the back, which corresponds to this, is called the optic radiation. It's thicker tissue that takes the information back to the visual cortex. And these colors divide because the visual cortex has a lot of different specialized processing. And it's sending and receiving signals to and from other parts of the brain ceaselessly, as I said. And the different areas relate to specialized functions: shape, motion, direction, distances, so spatial recognition, object recognition. There's actually like a separate area just for facial recognition. Then as things are processed in the visual cortex, they then travel through two main pathways back to other areas of your brain. And one goes through the temporal lobe and one goes through the parietal lobe. And it's not until, and both of those areas then may feed or may not feed information to the frontal lobe, which is the only place where you would have a conscious perception of what you're seeing, is if that information actually makes it back to the frontal lobe. Any questions? No, it's good. Okay, so the way we use our eyes affects neuroplasticity and how our synapses fire. Going back to this picture, how our synapses fire, how they reorganize their connections, and basically how information is transported to various areas of the brain. How effective the feedback loops are in orchestrating how we think, feel, move, and react is all greatly influenced and impacted by our eyesight. And our visual perception is very fleeting. It's much less stable than we ever tend to think it might be. It can be as fluid as our moods, and they both influence one another. How's everybody doing? Good? Anybody glazing over yet? Okay, so we're basically ready to go on a little guided tour. And we're going to just take a closer look at some of the brain and try to gain a better appreciation of everything that's going on in there. Highlights only, but of what's going on in there. And so we'll be able to see have a better sense of how our vision creates our world. So we're going to do an exercise for about 10 minutes. And for this exercise, it's like a meditation. So I want you to listen to my voice, but I don't want you to get caught up in really tracking what I'm saying or really trying to understand what these different areas are doing. We're going to just sort of take a walk through, like a stroll kind of. You could imagine like you're on a train and you're watching the scenery go by, but you're not paying too much attention to any particular thing that you're seeing. Just allow your awareness to go with my voice. And so you want to sit comfortably in your chair with a stable base, preferably not leaning against the backrest, and so that your knees are lower than your sit bones and your feet are firmly on the floor, both feet. So you want to feel stable. If you feel comfortable taking off your glasses, it looks like everybody has already. So that's cool. You can close your eyes. And as I said, this will go on for about 10 minutes. So the first thing to do is notice your eyes and how they're feeling right now. You can take a nice deep breath in. And a long breath out. Just noticing how they're feeling. No judgment or evaluation. Do they feel tired or dry? Do they feel moist? Are they happy being closed? How do they feel in your eye socket? Do they both feel the same, or maybe one feels smaller than the other? Or the sensation of your eyelid on your eye might be different in each eye? Just noticing. Now you can bring your awareness to the area in front of your eyes. Feel it soften. Notice how even with your eyes closed, you can still perceive light coming through your eyelids into your eyes. Feel how that light feels. And notice its effect on the screen of your vision. And the light is coming in through your eyelids, into the front of your eyes, through your cornea, the outermost layer, protecting your eyes, into the fluid chamber that cushions and lubricates your pupil and iris. And feel that there's some liquidy, velvety spaciousness in that area, in the front of your eye. And the iris, which is the colored part of your eye, is like a muscle. It opens and closes to calibrate the amount of light entering the pupil before it then moves on to the lens, which is behind your pupil and iris. Your lens refracts or bends the light waves, which are nothing more than vibrations, onto your retina, which is the lining of the interior of your eyeball. So imagine your retina covered with hundreds of millions of photoreceptors, receiving the light vibrations coming in through your eyes. Your retina is translating those vibrations into electrical impulses that then travel through the back of your eye into the optic nerve, cranial nerve number 2. From there, your optic nerves travel into the center of your head, traveling through the temporal lobe. The optic nerves meet in the middle at the optic chiasm, which forms sort of an X in the center of your head. Here, your optic nerves partially cross over each other, directly in front of the hypothalamus, allowing each side of the brain to receive input from both eyes. Now each optic tract, which contains nerve fibers from both eyes at this point, travels to the thalamus, located right above your brainstem. The thalamus acts as a relay station, allowing nerve fiber connections to travel to the cerebral cortex in all directions. This is part of the limbic system where memory and emotion is processed. It's directly above the brainstem, where if there's any immediate action required, your nervous system will kick into gear. These nerve fibers interface with your amygdala and hippocampus. Then they proceed via the optic radiation to the visual cortex in the back of your head, in your occipital lobe. All this information is flying around at lightning speeds, connecting over different synaptic firings. Within your visual cortex, there's various processing sections for different aspects of your vision. Your visual cortex is busy constantly, ceaselessly, sending and receiving signals, not only through the visual pathway that we just traversed, but with all different areas of the brain. Areas for shapes, motion, direction, color, form, speed of movement, spatial recognition, facial recognition. More than half of your brain is involved in the process. And there are two major pathways that are taking information to other areas of the brain. The pathway that travels through the parietal lobe monitors our position in space, and visual information is used to formulate action plans. The other pathway that travels through the temporal lobe processes information used to recognize things, including emotional memories. And some of the information from each of these pathways will funnel to the frontal lobe, the top of your head. And in the frontal lobe, it will be assessed for meaning and significance. And at this point, it would become a conscious perception. With our eyes still closed, we can begin to prepare to come back to the room by rubbing our palms together. We can place one hand in front of our eyes and one at the back of our skull where we were looking where the visual cortex is. And you can let your hands come a little bit off the surface of your body into your etheric layer. And just try, without thinking too much, to just sense that there are millions of nerves firing off in all different places at every moment, helping us relate to our world. You can cover your eyes with both palms when you're ready. You can slowly open your fingers a little bit at a time to let some light into your eyes while they're still closed. And when you're ready, you can start to open your eyes with your hands still over them with, some light coming in. And as you're ready, you can open your fingers more and more until you feel comfortable taking your hands from your eyes. And now take another moment to check in with your eyes and your whole being, to just sense if you feel any different than you felt at the beginning. Things could change just in the way your eyes feel or anything, just how your nervous system feels, how your posture feels. Okay, so I'm going to stop the screen share and invite anyone who would like to unmute and share with us how that was. Doreen.
That was so needed. I got on and I've been having internet issues and my nervous system was like this, and I want to really be there for Janet, and I'm on the phone because the internet wouldn't connect, and
Oh,
I was just so tense. And doing this, my whole system just relaxed totally. And it's interesting because we had done this before together, and while it was relaxing, there was such a dramatic difference of the tension I had felt and how everything shifted in my, not only with my eyes, but with my entire body. It was very cool. I needed that. Thank you.
thank you for sharing that. To me, it's amazing how tuning into our vision can change so much about how we feel in the moment. Would anyone else like to share? Lua, baby.
Hi there. Yeah, I need to say it before I forget it because it's like fresh in my mind. So that was really that was super interesting because in the beginning, first of all, I have to say your voice is so soothing. It's like gentle waters, like sweet water, like a river. I could listen to for a long time. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And so in the beginning of the exercise, felt like a little bit more cerebral, like I was thinking and following the directions, not as cerebral as the beginning, let's say, because also interactive. I was thinking. And then at one point, it's like my brain space, head space, kind of like filled with light. And I'll tell you, it feels really good. It felt really good to honor my brain and to like be with my brain and everything it holds and everything it does, which you walked us through so much of that. Because I've never really, I take it for granted. Or I don't really think about it that much. And then the third part was like when you had even before you said to touch up here, I was already intuitively, my hands went up there. And so then when the hands were there, and especially when we had the front and the back, like my head suddenly felt like a cathedral, like
Nice.
the inside of a cathedral, like a temple. And it became this like temple. And then, and then for like more than a moment, but then I felt, it sounds weird, I'm almost gonna cry. Then I felt like in direct communion with God. I felt like I was like, and then you had us do something, and then like to open and have the light come in when you put the palms, and then open, let the light come in. Then it was like I was like reaching to God and to like as his child or her child, the creator's child. It was really cool. And now I'm feeling all like tingly and like juicy. So like, whoa, fucking yeah. Like, wow, so sacred, really sacred. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for sharing. That was beautiful.
Thank you for leading, like opening that and leading me through that, us. Yeah, now as I say it, I'm like even getting more layers of being blown away by it, but I'm present, I'm here. So I'm gonna like stop.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Who else wants to share out there? Jackie.
Hi there. I want to say it's very interesting. Like the exercise, I feel like it's very reflective of my moment right now, where I really need a lot of time alone and quiet. And I feel like the more I'm alone and quiet, the more I feel like there's so much more happening on so many different levels. So this was really exactly in line with, my moment. And it was really interesting. I loved just sitting with our eyes in the beginning when you first started, because that really calmed me down a lot before, just made it easier to listen to everything that followed. But coming out of the exercise at the end, I found it really overwhelming to open up my eyes and just look out again, because it's like all of a sudden there's a deeper idea of all that goes into just seeing. And seeing isn't just seeing. And so yeah, I mean, it's really interesting and very cool to have, like I said, a real reflection in my moment. So thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else like to share their experience? Is that Shelley? Yay, Shelley.
Yeah, sorry. I'm in a place where you can't see me. Let me go out. Janet, I don't know exactly. I don't even know how to say this. I don't know exactly what you, and you may have said it in the beginning, what the intention that we were going to get for this, but like, I definitely had a really like multi-dimensional cosmic experience as well. And so I think there's something around your medicine and your power that, I mean, like Lua was saying something around like, how we were keeping this like cerebral in our head, but then you opened up this space with your story, with your imagery, with your voice, with your presence, with something inside of you that wasn't verbalized in the words. And I'm still kind of processing everything and digesting everything, because it's like I feel like I was paying attention to the journey, the anatomy of everything, but I was in many different places. I would say that yeah, especially like you got in the story where you were talking about how you like only the thing that makes it to the frontal cortex is what we become conscious of. And so like even before we went into the meditation, like that was in my thing. It's like all the stuff that I'm not conscious of. And so maybe that's where it began. I'm not sure. But it's just fascinating and like super multidimensional. And I don't know if there was an intention for it to be as multidimensional as it was. Yes,
Yes, there definitely was. Yes.
Okay. All right, cool.
I didn't state that part. I just
Yes.
left it like that, to notice how it can make you feel better is the way I said it.
Right.
How tuning into your vision can help you feel better in all sorts of ways.
Right. And I mean, there's a part of me that's wondering, I mean, like I still have to process this, and I'll connect with you at another time because I have to leave here in a minute. But yeah, there's a part of me that's wondering, like with this presentation, like if there was something also in the group energy of this multidimensional thing that happened. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, yeah, Janet, you're so powerful. You really are. And you have such vibratory medicine. And I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Julie.
Thank you, Janet. I loved learning in that level of depth about the eyes and taking that inward journey. It made me think of, and I didn't realize, I that it goes through the limbic system, which is smell, a lot of it. And then so like that's, and then sight is fire. And I was thinking about just this was the literal, vision and sight, but then the metaphorical vision, and it made me think a couple of questions. I don't know, just like, I wonder why, like this, why at some point our vision gets less. I guess that's just like the physical body breaking down, like the actual, but then it made me also wonder like what happens with like psychedelics and what's wrong with the brain with psychedelics and plants and things. Not that I'm just, it was just really fascinating, but my eyes feel honored, my sight and vision, the literal feels honored. And I'm really, it feels like it was a cleansing for my eyes, just to be with it. So thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. And I think that's one of the points that to me is so magical, is that by doing really simple things to honor our vision and tune into our eyes, that we can actually affect our bigger vision. We can affect the way our body's working, and it's endlessly fascinating. There's tons of research going on now. So I think I'm going to try to keep going with this theme. And psychedelics is an interesting place too, because they're doing a lot of research with that. And somebody wrote in the chat here, Lua, I just saw. Did you want to unmute and say something, Lua?
No, I was just chiming in that when Julie said about the psychedelics, I got excited because I was totally wondering the same thing, because they can be so visual, and how that works into everything that you described.
Absolutely. So maybe there'll be more to follow on that topic.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering also about inner vision, and also about how when we lose sight in the physical world, a lot of times we actually start diving more into inner vision places, which is interesting to me. Also the connection, as we already know, even, and you brought it in, how trauma with the rapid eye move, like the movement, trauma movements with the eye, how that affects the brain and the responses in the body. But besides that, even through your guided meditation, I'm just still in the sensation parts of it, because there is like an activation buzz that keeps going from different areas of my cranium and like head and brain. And it's something that I am aware of in general, but your meditation brought that up. So meaning like, when we do even, and that's why I also thinking about inner vision and other things, because when we do our energy work, there's times that I feel these different areas of my brain start buzzing and working in these different areas. And so that's what arose when you went through this meditation. And so that's really interesting. And also the other thing that was interesting to me is I don't do as much work on the computer. So I would assume that my eyes wouldn't tire out the way that other people that work in front of the computer all the time. And I've noticed that when I do my sessions, sometimes I have such an exhaustion around my eyes and very tired eyes. And I'm like, that's interesting. How come I have tired eye syndrome when I'm just doing actually sessions where I'm not like staring at the screen? So many of these things that you just guided us through and talked about kind of rang a little bit more sense in some ways, because of the multidimensional way that our sight activates and informs us and takes in information and combines information to all these different centers of the brain. So that was quite powerful. Thank you. Beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you. Your share is beautiful. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Well, I really appreciate everyone coming. I'm going to just share my screen again with the my contact information. So if anyone has anything else that they would like to share later or talk about, I could talk about this topic endlessly. And I'm looking forward to actually doing more of these. Because this one, it's kind of funny maybe, but from all the presentations I've done during the module have all been about vision. And this one I sort of paired out as much as I could and keep it as simple as I could and, you know, get it to its essence. And so I feel from your experiences like this is the way to go. And it's hard for me with my mind. I want to put in all these details and all this stuff. But actually we're more powerful in a way when we let go of the mind stuff and really center more. So that's been my experience with this project. And I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you all. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to stop the bubbling around. Okay, stop the recording.